So before we start, I want to make note that this episode that I'm gonna be making a minor ruminations to my ruminations. I still if you know what I'm talking about. A few days, like about a week ago, I made a ruminations video after a very idiotic retcon to the show that I honest to God don't buy. Period. But I'll just explain it. I said before that the canon I'm accepting now is that the ghosts that Danny fights were dead once, but then we're dead one. We're alive once. Sorry, we're alive once, but then died. And while I still stand by that for some of them, it's clear that this episode makes it very clear that not all the ghosts in the ghost zone were alive at one point. Why is that? Well. Today we're going to be discussing episode 13 of Danny Phantom, Fright Night. And in this episode, and it's their Halloween episode, pretty much, as Danny accidentally winds up knocking over a paint, while trying to fight a ghost eel, winds up accidentally knocking over a paint bucket that falls on Dash, which causes Dash to want to hurt him, and in turn causes Lancer to want to give them both attention. However, he decides to cut a little deal. Since it's Halloween, a little contest the faculty does is that every year they switch off who can make a haunted house, and this year it's Lancer's turn, and he wants to one up the haunted house that was done by the gym teacher the year prior. So he's tasking Danny and Dash with making scary rooms for the haunted house, and whichever room is the scariest will be the one that will be declared the winner, and that winner won't have to do detention. On top of that, Danny and Dash wind up adding a little extra, wind up doing a little extra bet on top of that, where if Danny wins, then Dash has to run through the school parking lot in his underwear, but if Dash wins, Danny has to eat his jockstrap, which is gross, if you ask me. But anyway, while Danny's trying to brainstorm ideas for a haunted house, Sam winds up giving him inspiration in the form of a book called The Legend of the Fright Night. Essentially, a ghost that's meant to be a literal spirit of Halloween. He brought terror across the land, and it was said that anyone that he cut with his sword was sent to a dimension of their worst fears. However, when they show a picture, Sam winds up showing a picture of his domain, and Danny realizes that he saw something like this in the ghost zone. Because they apparently have, as we established in Fanning the Flames, they've been making a map of the ghost zone. As such, Danny tries to use the Fright Night for inspiration for his haunted house, but doesn't do that. But doesn't actually make it work. But he doesn't. But all of it's just stupid. It all looks bad. Like it all looks cheap, childish, and not even worth the time that was put into it. As such, Danny realizing that Dash is going to win because his area is a lot cooler than his, he decides that he's going to go right to the source to make his haunted house. As he goes directly into the ghost zone and goes to the Fright Knight's lair. He manages to work through all the traps and eventually manages to work up to the Fright Knight himself, finding, or at least his sword, which he pulls out of a pumpkin sheath. But by doing this, he winds up waking up the Fright Knight, who, upon waking up, wants to spread his terror across the land. As such, Danny manages to get away from him and manages to get out of the ghost zone, but unfortunately the Fright Knight manages to follow after, and when Danny gets back to the haunted house and he puts the Fright Knight's sword down, it winds up unleashing what they call an ectostorm, which winds up unleashing the Fright Knight's power across all of Amity Park, and if left unchecked, eventually across the whole world, and as pretty much it's shooting off lightning that whatever it hits, it turns into a monster and so forth, and the Fright Knight winds up coming out, and pretty much, this is exactly what he wants, if this continues going unabated, he will eventually be able to take over the land and pretty much reign supreme, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, though, Lancer goes to Danny's section of the haunted house because he had already looked at Dash's, and now he's trying to judge it, and for some reason, Danny is just okay with all the scary stuff because Lancer is impressed and thinks, oh, I can make this work, oh, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this is scary, this can be fun, this can be good, blah, blah, blah. It's just dumb. It's just dumb as the world's just going to hell in a handbasket. Danny's just holding off actually going to save everyone till Lancer says that he's won the contest. As such, eventually, eventually Lancer does say that Danny wins, and so Danny pulls out what his parents called, I think, I forgot what it was called. It's like a carpet. It's essentially an ectofoam cleaner, I think. I don't know. It essentially shoots out an ectoplasmic foam that pretty much disrupts ghosts and so forth. As such, he starts using that to fend off all the monsters that the sword is creating. But in the process, the Fright Night winds up knocking into their door and carrying Tucker as well, because Tucker went out trick or treating and he thought the Fright Night was Danny, which I don't really understand, because I know Danny had a fake Fright Night, but the Fright Night looks actually looks terrifying. We'll get back to that later. But the Fright Night managed to pull out his sword, and of course, as the legend says, it does exactly what it's supposed to, as he manages to slash Lancer and Tucker, and they're both sent to realms of their worst fears, where Lancer's in a black void with chalkboards that grab onto him and make him scratch the board, and Tucker is sent to a dimension where he has no technology, no clothes, is stranded on an island, and he has to take notes, which is actually it's actually a little funny, but I can't. But either way, as Danny's trying to fight off the Fright Night, Sam looks through her book to try and find some information, but eventually manages to find and figures out that in order to stop the Ectostorm and to send the Fright Night away, they need to sheath the sword in a pumpkin. Unfortunately, though, Danny does not have any pumpkins in his haunted house, which even he chides himself for, because it's Halloween. That's like the obvious choice. Sorry about that. But it turns out that Tucker, his pail actually was in the shape of a pumpkin. So as such, he thinks that'll do, and he manages to get the Fright Night sword out of his hands and then plunges it directly into Tucker's bucket, which technically counts, and as such, pretty much the entire Ectostorm is in reverse. Everything that was transformed into monsters is undone, and everything that was ghostly is sucked back into the ghost zone, with the Fright Night swearing vengeance against Danny and so forth. And with the Fright Night swearing vengeance, and Lancer and Tucker brought back to the real world. Of course, Lancer thinks that this was all terrifying and declares Danny the winner, but Danny, feeling guilty that his desire to get a good grade almost trumped his desire to save everybody, says that he cheated in order to get what he needed. But though in this case he says instead of saying he stole the sword, he says he stole his parents' stuff. But Lancer says that he doesn't really care where it came from, because at least he can try and trump that gym teacher whose name I still don't remember. But unfortunately, by the time he's ready to open up the doors, Danny's parents come knocking in because they've been trying to track the Ectostorm to its source. They shoot Lancer, and when the gym teacher and all these other colleagues come up and laugh at Lancer, Lancer takes back the win and says that Dash won. As such, Danny's parents are angry at him because they learned this was a get out of detention contest, and Danny ends up having to eat the jockstrap, though we are spared actually seeing him having to eat it. So yeah, on the whole, what do I think about this episode? I think it's dumb, but it is so fun. It is so fun. It's like I mentioned before, how when I watched Last Laugh in Classic Ben 10, that was a very Halloween-esque episode. Like, that one was trying to get in the scares and the colors and so forth. Well, this one is kind of going for the other side of Halloween. The fun scares and so forth. And that's exactly what I think it does, what it does. Like, the Fright Knight himself, I love his design. It actually does kind of look like threatening. He looks like a black knight. He has a ponytail made of fire. He has a ponytail and cape or whatever made of flames. He has a black horse that has jutting armor. I love his design. I really do. And just kind of the idea of it, and of course, while the whole spreading terror is kind of a little cliche, again, kind of, I still think it really looks nice, and it really allows for just some kind of creative colors and designs and so forth. And I admit that I like the whole idea of a sword that when you're hit by it, rather than actually wounding you, it sends you to your worst fear, which in turn makes it so that you have to avoid it at all costs, which I think is really nice. And I like how it just kind of builds up on top of each other. It really does try to encompass the fun scares of the fun part of Halloween, just trying to be trying to be scary and trying to get creative with what it does. And it's exactly that. Like, you see Danny trying to create a spooky haunted house, which, while cheesy, I think while cheesy, actually he does try his best with. And when it starts being affected by the Fright Knight's ectostorm, it really is it really is kind of it really is nice and allows her and kind of and allows her some more creative imagery. Not really disturbing imagery, but still creative and a little creepy. Creepy, not disturbing, creepy. There's a difference. Or it's not. Or there's not. I don't really know. Either way, I think it looks nice. On top of that, which I think is really nice, and I get, but with that being said, there are things in this episode that I think are a little dumb. Which, as I stated, for starters, the whole run of the episode is just kind of Danny being stupid. Which, again, I suppose makes sense. He's 14 years old and so forth. But every bad thing that happens in this episode is directly caused by him. He pulls out the sword, which releases the Fright Knight. He's the one that sheathes the sword in the ground, which unleashes the Ectostorm. And things just keep getting worse and worse, and Danny doesn't do anything to stop it because, well, he wants to win that contest and so forth. And yet, to his credit, he does learn his lesson, but it's like at the very end of the episode, really with only like the slightest of build up before it. As such, it really is kind of a dumb thing, and I'll give it credit that it shows his age. That he's a 14-year-old, that he's 14 and is trying to do, and he's kind of concerned. But even Sam thinks that this was a dumb thing to do. And again, the whole contest thing is a little weird. And again, I guess you could say he gets his just desserts at the end because he unleashed this evil. So it's right makes sense that he doesn't win the contest and kind of has to suffer the consequences. But it's kind of mostly but again, it's mostly Danny. And on top of that, while I like the Fright Knight's design and kind of what comes of it, personality-wise, he's just kind of your standard dark guy with a loud voice, speaking in thous and so forth. And reign of terror, I shall win. Again, I think I like his voice though. And speaking of voices, I learned that Ron Perlman actually voices Lancer, which I never knew. Yeah, learned something new. But again, while those things kind of mostly encompass the episode, and while the Fright Knight really does have a nice presence and look to him, he's just kind of the generic, I want to rule the world, without really anything else added to him beyond the power. As such, while aesthetically he's nice and kind of his theme works, I think there are more memorable Danny Phantom villains. But again, I think and it really that kind of does impede the episode. Danny's stupidity and the Fright Knight's lack of character kind of do get in the way. But again, while I think the episode's dumb, I think it still has a lot of good things in it that still make it fun. I love how, again, it's not the creepy element of Halloween, but the fun element of Halloween. Like seeing seeing the creative designs, the spooky atmosphere, the way of the fun action, even just kind of going to a haunted house in the form of the Fright Knight's castle. I like that sort of thing, and the episode does it well enough. So, yeah. On the whole, while I think this episode's dumb, it's a very fun kind of dumb. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. Good episode. Yeah. So, yeah. What time is it? Let me see. Oh, okay. That was a little shorter than I thought, but whatever. Sorry, I had to look at the time on my tablet. So either way, I think that's pretty much about it. So, again, thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and we will tune in next week for the next installment of the Phantom Perspectives. There, I actually did say the name of the video. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Take care.